Hello, I'm Mike from the Rewatch Project with Hannah and Mike podcast, and I am back looking at the original run of classic Doctor Who. I am a lifelong Trekkie who has never watched Doctor Who, so what will I find of it, particularly these earlier episodes? So far, I'm very happy to say that I've been enjoying it a lot, and it's kind of an odd experience. I almost feel like I'm getting nostalgia for a show that I've never even watched. I mentioned before that growing up in the 70s and the 80s, I was very much of the Star Wars generation and coming up with those Spielberg blockbusters. But at the same time, I remember my grandmother used to stay with us a lot and we'd watch a lot of old films, everything from Cary Grant movies, Doris Day movies, right back to early silent cinema, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton. And I was a big fan of Harold Lloyd. So I've never really had that much of a trouble putting myself in the mindset of watching something a little bit older and being able to watch it within context. So on that front, I have been struggling too much with those, but it's been a very enjoyable experience. And central to that enjoyment has been the interactions that I've had with you, the audience, the very kind, very generous, so far very sane Doctor Who fandom. So I really appreciate the comments that you have left on the YouTube channel. Please continue to do so. It is wonderful interacting with you. In fact, I want to read one out. I don't do this normally, but there's one that really jumped out at me from the last episode, so I'm just going to bring this up. So this is from Soup Dragon 1961, who says, "Great analysis." This is talking about the last episode, The Keys of Marinus Part 2, The Velvet Web. I have previously noted the similarity of the three disembodied brains with the providers in Gamesters of Triskelion. This is an episode of the original Star Trek series. I hadn't actually thought of that episode when I made the comparison, but that is a great shout. I put that comparison down to coincidence and dismissed it. Since you mentioned Star Trek, I decided to have another think about it. I tried picturing the episode in colour and the similarity becomes much more obvious. The stone castle walls and togas wouldn't have looked out of place at all in an episode of TOS. It's likely for the same reasons you've already mentioned, keeping everything within budget. And on a similar note, there's a comment from Papa Laz. You cannot ever go wrong with the old brain in a jar alien. There was no possibility that any of them could have even known Star Trek was being made. Some of these tropes are just from sci-fi at the time, and I think that is completely on the money. I think it was very much just a zeitgeist kind of situation. But yes, thank you to both of those commenters, and also please do add your comments, your bits of Doctor Who lore, history, feedback on the show in general. I do very much enjoy reading them and do try to get back to as many of them as possible. So yeah, thank you so much to everybody who's done that. So today we are going to be looking at the episode, The Keys of Marinus Part 3, The Screaming Jungle. So yeah, let's get straight into it. Let's watch this episode of Doctor Who. They are in the Screaming Jungle.
There could be animals in this jungle around us.
No, it wasn't anything like that.
They seem to encounter quite a lot of quite foppish guest characters, don't they? I don't know whether that's just to make the regulars seem a little bit more effective. But yeah, it definitely seems to be a bit of a pattern here.
Easy, Susan, and try and tell us what it was you heard. Sort of an archway. Oh,
Very video game, isn't it?
these creepers.
Individual quests.
Grandfather, all right. Yes. I didn't want to stay until the last possible moment.
I do wish Ian wouldn't treat us like Dresden China.
I think it's nice the way he looks after us all the time.
Yes, I know. But just once in a while.
You rebel.
Yes.
Interesting.
How are you feeling now?
A little bit of self-awareness and women's lib, I think was the term at the time, wasn't it? This being looked after by the men not being completely necessary. But then you have got Susan screaming and fainting and doing all of that kind of stuff. But I think that's more about her age, which is easy to forget because in classic TV form they're casting somebody a little bit older. But Barbara certainly isn't really for the most part shown as the damsel in distress. So I think, and she's more often than not, she's correct. She's right as well. So I think she has definitely earned the right to not be fathered by Ian.
Oh, I'm all right, thank you. I just recognize it as being something evil.
Bit disconcerting.
You know, I've never seen vegetation as dense as this before.
Great subject change.
These walls will be so
Oh,
Push your way through.
it's alive.
Looking at this archway.
Like the Evil Dead.
Not at all sure. It isn't hard.
Way before the facts, of course. Smack it.
No, it must have fallen on you from the tree.
No, it didn't. It's
Now,
alive.
stop it, Susan. Stop it.
He was trying to twine around me.
Yeah, it's been quite a lot of, crying wolf in the last couple of episodes. Quite a lot of, a character being the only one who knows. Very much a horror movie trope. It's interesting to see that coming back in a different form here in this episode. You see, I this is again in Star Trek, just to go back to the holy franchise. It is interesting how they address characters not believing other characters when they say something outlandish, because of course of the volume of outlandish things that they have encountered, and it must be a difficult thing to dramatize. It must be very tricky for the writers to be able to write realistic dialogue, because you would want the characters to say, well, how can you say this is crazy when all of that mad shit that happened last week occurred? It's something that you have to kind of sidestep a little bit, a little bit like characters never really referencing zombie movies in zombie movies. It's almost as though you just have to accept the genre rules in order for it to work. We're in Alan Quatermain, Doc Savage territory here.
She's gone down here.
What? Barbara, what are you doing? I told you to wait until we got back.
He told her to wait.
Key, the microcircuit. I found it.
Oh, look out. He's getting a bit handsy. You see, again, it's a little bit of a step back. She's being kind of proven wrong for thinking she could do this herself, and is now calling out for Ian. So that's a bit of a shame there. Again, though, for time, the genre. Just having her assert herself, I suppose, is something.
Yes. Anything that matters is getting Barbara out of there. Yes, I agree.
Aw, bless him.
Keep it with the other and keep it safe.
Injured when she was trapped. She can escape whenever she wants.
It's a possibility.
Good logic.
Well, I'm sure she will have thought of that. Yes, of course.
But if she used her travel dial and's gone on to the next destination, we don't know what danger she may be.
Ian's maybe starting to realise the depth of his feelings for Barbara, maybe?
In there.
No.
Don't get a lot of Barbaras these days, do you?
Let's cover all possibilities to the best of our abilities. And I'll be your guardian, Susan.
Don't worry. He's a big, strong man. Or a sort of foppish man.
Goodbye, Ian.
Good luck.
Oh, Ian, you're a bloody hero.
You better put this on your chain with the other one.
Look, Ian. This edge is a fraction shorter.
Are you absolutely sure? I mean, is
Drat.
it possible that there was some genuine variation in the original micro keys?
No, they all look absolutely identical. So this one must be an imitation.
Couldn't the first one be an imitation?
We're no further on than when we arrived here.
There's probably some in-story reason why that's not the case that I've forgotten.
Go on ahead with the others.
Sorry.
We're worried already. Tell them what happened. And tell them I'll follow as soon as I find the real micro key.
Please be careful.
I will. Off you go.
God, Ian's day just got a lot more complicated. Go on, give it a hug. I love secret chambers in cavernous environments. It's a classic for a reason, isn't it? Oh, it's kind of Pirates of the Caribbean ride meets Indiana Jones.
Let's get the
I wonder, was Dave the Triffids written for John Wyndham novel? Was that around this time or maybe earlier? The idea of malevolent, sentient plant life. I'm just wondering what the chronology is on that. I remember being horrified by the BBC miniseries that was done in the late 70s, early 80s of David Triffids. That's burnt into my psyche. I'd like to do a reaction video to that. Actually, I haven't seen that, I don't think, since it was first on. Another episode with the Doctor largely absent. Curious to know if that was just a story choice or whether there was some practical consideration for why he's not around on that. I mean, completely absent so far. Oh. I love struggling with net acting. It's like lifting polystyrene heavy rock acting. Oh. Both booby trapped. Yeah, this is very adventure serial. It's getting closer. How did they resist not having this moment as the end of episode cliffhanger? I mean, this is classic sort of 30s, 40s serial. Yeah, they could have milked that a bit, I think.
Why have you come in search of the keys?
Help me.
Look at this guy.
Who are you?
Cat Weasel.
What interest have you in the keys?
Good job.
Help me! Oh, help me!
Dear.
Help me! Help me! Help me!
Why bloody should we? And they're getting it from all sides on this one, aren't they? No, I'm just sleeping, mate.
Combination, what is that?
D-E-302.
Hello. Only got the letters on.
Hello.
I wonder if that's what Susan heard.
I don't know. I think he was rambling. It didn't mean anything. I'm hoping to find a lead.
Again, the choice of when to be cynical. I mean, in fairness, you wouldn't know. You'd just doubt reality constantly if you lived under these insane circumstances that these characters move through.
The growth accelerator has changed nature's tempo of destruction entirely.
Yes.
That's quite a clever idea.
Very fascinating.
It's a good sci-fi, solid sci-fi conceit.
Combination to that safe.
All right, all right.
Sounds like whisper.
Oh,
It's like someone trying to get in.
You said that when we were outside, about the jungle.
all right, calm down, mate.
It couldn't.
It's be the big strong man, remember?
Barbara, don't you see
Triffid attack.
what he meant? Tempo of destruction.
Oh, I spoke too soon about Barbara not getting hysterical. Can't blame her though, to be fair.
E302. The micro key's in one of these jars. Come on, quick, let's find it.
It's like an escape room, isn't it? Or the Adventure Game, or the Crystal Maze, or one of those shows. Boom. Oh, out of the frying pan into the refrigerator. Snows of Terror. Love a good pulpy title. Okay, so, I mean, despite the lack of Hartnell in that, again, curious as to the reasons, very enjoyable, fun adventure episode, you know, lots of great L. Rider Haggard, Robert Howard styles. I mean, obviously, Indiana Jones is the obvious comparison, but of course, that would come many years later. But yeah, lots of compartments, traps, great sci-fi ideas, forward momentum with the story. I like this idea. It's a little bit like what happened in the Marco Polo story, where it was a larger serial storyline, but each episode kind of had its own goal, its own side quest, to use a modern. A little bit like the story structure that you see returning in shows like The Mandalorian, the Star Wars one, where you've got a story that runs for the season, but each episode kind of has its own identity. And I very much enjoy that about this. So yeah, looking forward to getting into the next episode of this. And again, appreciate feedback either at rewatchprojectpodcast@gmail.com. And please don't forget to check out my other show, the audio podcast, The Rewatch Project with Hannah and Mike, where we rewatch some of our favourite TV shows. We're currently rewatching the original Twin Peaks. And also, please do share, like, subscribe to the channel. It'd be great to get more subscribers and do all of those things that push up the profile of the show on YouTube and elsewhere, because that greatly increases my proactivity and appetite to continue doing this. So anything that you can do to help or support or promote the show, or any suggestions that you have for good venues to do that in the Doctor Who community, of which I still in my early stages of navigating, that would be greatly appreciated. So I'll be back very soon with the Snows of Terror, the 4th episode of the Keys of Marinus storyline. So bye-bye.